The large doors of the council chamber closed with a deep, echoing thud. The sound seemed to hang in the air for a moment before fading into an unsettling silence. Inside the room, Jacob Monroe sat at the head of the long table. His hands rested on its smooth surface, fingers drumming lightly as if searching for something to hold on to. His face was pale, his eyes tired but sharp, scanning the empty seats where humans had been just moments ago. He felt the weight of their absence pressing down on him. Clara Hayes stood near the far end of the room, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She was one of the few humans who had stayed behind after the others left for Earth. Her dark hair fell loosely around her shoulders, and though she tried to look calm, her lips were pressed together in a thin line. She glanced toward Jacob, then quickly looked away when their eyes met. Neither of them wanted to be the first to speak. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating, as though the room itself knew that something significant, and perhaps dangerous, was about to happen. Outside the chamber, alien representatives gathered in small groups. Their forms varied greatly, some tall and slender, others short and stout, some covered in shimmering scales, others with skin like polished stone. Despite their differences, they all shared the same uneasy expression. Glowing eyes darted back and forth, watching each other cautiously. Whispers filled the hallways, though none of them spoke loudly enough for Jacob or Clara to hear clearly. It wasn't hard to guess what they were talking about. Humans had left the council meeting abruptly, citing the need to prepare for an unknown threat. To many of the aliens, this decision felt like abandonment. Jacob finally broke the silence. "Do you think we made the right choice?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Clara hesitated before answering. She walked slowly toward the table and pulled out a chair, sitting across from him. "I don't know," she admitted, shaking her head slightly. "But leaving now won't make things better." Her tone was measured, but there was a hint of frustration beneath it. She didn't want to believe that humanity had acted out of fear, yet part of her couldn't deny it. Nearby, an insectoid ambassador named Zixer clicked its mandibles impatiently. Its body shifted slightly, antennae twitching as it observed the two humans. "Your kind always runs when fear takes hold," Zixer said sharply. Its voice carried a metallic edge, cutting through the quiet like a blade. Clara stiffened at the comment but chose not to respond. Deep down, she knew there was truth in the accusation. Humanity had always been quick to act on instinct, even when caution might have served them better. Jacob sighed deeply, leaning back in his chair. He rubbed his temples, trying to ease the tension building inside him. "We didn't run because we're afraid," he said finally, addressing both Clara and Zixer. "We ran because we have responsibilities, to our people, to our planet. We can't just sit here and wait for whatever is coming." Zixer tilted its head slightly, studying him with unblinking eyes. "And yet you leave us to face it alone," it replied coldly. The words hung in the air, sharp and accusing. Clara glanced at Jacob, unsure how to respond. She understood why humanity had decided to return home, but hearing it framed as cowardice stung more than she expected. The silence returned, thicker this time, wrapping around everyone like a suffocating blanket. Outside, the whispers continued, growing louder as the aliens debated among themselves. Some argued that humanity's departure was justified, while others saw it as proof that humans could never truly be trusted allies. Clara clenched her fists under the table, feeling the tension rise. Whatever happened next, she realized, would depend not only on humanity but also on whether these fractured alliances could hold together long enough to face the storm ahead. Earlier that day, the council chamber had been filled with voices, some calm, others raised in heated argument. The topic of discussion was a signal, strange and unfamiliar, that had drifted across the vastness of space to reach their sensors. It wasn't aggressive or threatening, but there was something unsettling about it. The rhythm of the signal was irregular, almost like a heartbeat skipping its usual pace. Scientists from various species had analyzed it, but no one could agree on its origin or its purpose. The human delegation, led by Nathan Brooks, had listened intently as the council debated what to do. Nathan was a tall man with short brown hair and glasses perched on his nose. He often spoke softly, but his words carried weight. When he stood up to address the council, the room fell silent. "This signal is unlike anything we've encountered," he began. "We don't know if it's a warning, a call for help, or something else entirely. But we can't ignore it." His voice grew firmer as he continued. "Earth needs time to prepare. Our defenses aren't ready for whatever might be coming." The chamber erupted into noise after Nathan finished speaking. Some ambassadors argued that humanity's departure would weaken the Council's ability to respond. Others believed that Earth had every right to protect itself. Clara Hayes watched the chaos unfold with growing unease. She understood why the humans wanted to leave, but she also knew how their decision would look to the rest of the galaxy. To many, it would seem like running away. As the debate raged on, Jacob Monroe sat quietly at the table, observing the scene. He didn't speak much during these meetings. He preferred to listen, but he felt the tension building around him. One ambassador, a reptilian being named Kale, slammed his clawed hand onto the table. "You ask us to trust you," Kale growled, his voice low and guttural. "But when danger comes, you flee. How can we rely on you?" Nathan opened his mouth to reply, but Jacob spoke first. "We're not fleeing," he said firmly, meeting Kale's piercing gaze. "We're preparing. If this signal leads to a threat, Earth will stand alongside the Council. But we need time to get ready." His words seemed to calm some of the anger in the room, though suspicion lingered in the eyes of many. Eventually, the Council reached a decision. Humanity would return to Earth to bolster its defenses, while the remaining ambassadors worked together to investigate the signal further. As the meeting drew to a close, the human delegation gathered their belongings and prepared to leave. Clara hesitated before following them out, glancing back at Jacob. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. Jacob nodded, though his expression was grim. "It's the best option we have," he replied. "But I don't envy the position we're leaving you in." Now, hours later, the chamber felt eerily empty without the humans. Clara sat alone at the table, staring at the spot where Nathan had stood earlier. Outside, the alien representatives continued to murmur among themselves. Their conversations were hushed, but she could hear snippets of their concerns. Some worried that humanity's departure signaled the beginning of the end for the Council. Others wondered if the signal was even real, or if it was a trick designed to divide them. Clara shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. She couldn't afford to dwell on doubts now. The Council needed her to stay focused, to keep things moving forward. But as she looked around the quiet chamber, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The silence wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the absence of trust, of unity. And without those, they were vulnerable. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. Zixer, the insectoid ambassador, entered the room, its movements precise and deliberate. Its glowing eyes fixed on Clara as it spoke. "Your people have left," Zixer said, its voice sharp and metallic. "What will you do now?" Clara straightened in her chair, meeting the ambassador's gaze. "I'll do my job," she replied evenly, "just like everyone else here." Zixer tilted its head slightly, studying her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, without another word, the ambassador turned and left the chamber. Clara exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her shoulders. Whatever came next, she realized, would test not only her abilities, but also the fragile bonds holding the Council together. Clara Hayes sat alone in the Council chamber, her fingers tracing the edge of the smooth metallic table. The room was dimly lit, with only a faint glow from the ceiling panels casting shadows across the walls. Outside, the hum of activity had quieted down, replaced by an unsettling stillness. She glanced at the empty seats where the human delegation had been sitting just hours before. Their absence felt like a wound that wouldn't heal, and Clara couldn't help but wonder if they'd made the right choice. Jacob Monroe entered the chamber quietly, his boots making soft clicks against the floor. He carried a tablet in one hand, Its screen glowing faintly as he scrolled through updates from Earth. Clara looked up when she heard him approach. "Any news?" she asked, her voice low and cautious. Jacob shook his head as he took a seat beside her. "Nothing new," he admitted. "The humans are on their way back to Earth, but it'll take some time for them to get there. Until then, we're on our own." His tone was calm, but there was a flicker of worry in his eyes that he couldn't hide. Clara nodded slowly, her gaze dropping to the table. "Do you think they'll be ready in time?" she asked. Her question hung in the air, heavy and uncertain. Jacob didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as if trying to ease the tension building inside him. "I don't know," he said finally, "but I hope so. If this signal turns out to be something serious." He trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. They both knew what was at stake. If humanity wasn't prepared, Earth could be in danger. And so could everyone else. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of the chamber doors sliding open. Zixer, the insectoid ambassador, stepped inside, its mandibles clicking softly as it moved. Its glowing eyes scanned the room before settling on Clara and Jacob. "Your people have abandoned us," Zixer said sharply, its voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "What assurance do we have that they will return?" Clara stiffened at the accusation, but forced herself to remain calm. "They haven't abandoned anyone," she replied firmly. "They're doing what they need to protect their planet. That doesn't mean they've turned their backs on the Council." Zixer tilted its head slightly, studying her with unblinking eyes. "Actions speak louder than words," it hissed. "And your actions suggest fear, not strength." Jacob leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Fear isn't weakness," he said, his voice steady. "It's a natural response to uncertainty. What matters is how we act on it. Humanity is preparing, not running away." The insectoid ambassador clicked its mandibles again, a sound that seemed almost dismissive. "We shall see," it said coldly before turning and leaving the chamber. The doors slid shut behind it, leaving Clara and Jacob in silence once more. "That went well," Clara muttered sarcastically, leaning back in her chair. She ran a hand through her hair, frustration evident in her expression. "How are we supposed to keep this council together if no one trusts us?" Jacob sighed deeply. "We focus on what we can control," he said. "Right now, that means figuring out what this signal is and deciding how to respond. If we can show leadership here, maybe we can rebuild some of that trust." Clara nodded, though she wasn't entirely convinced. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight, especially not in a room full of species with their own agendas and fears. Still, she knew Jacob was right. Sitting around worrying wouldn't solve anything. As they sat in silence, the weight of their responsibility settled over them like a heavy blanket. Outside, the alien representatives continued to whisper among themselves, their voices low and uneasy. Clara glanced toward the door, wondering what the others were saying about humanity's departure. Were they planning to act on their own, or would they wait for guidance from the Council? She turned back to Jacob, determination flickering in her eyes. "We need to call another meeting," she said firmly. "If we don't address this now, the divisions will only grow worse." Jacob nodded in agreement. "Let's do it," he said. "But we'll need to tread carefully. One wrong move, and this whole thing could fall apart." Clara exhaled slowly, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Whatever happened next, she realized, would depend on their ability to keep the fragile alliance intact. And with tensions rising, that was easier said than done. Back on Earth, Nathan Brooks sat in the command center of Lunar Base Alpha, his eyes glued to the monitors in front of him. The room was alive with activity. Lights blinked, machines hummed softly, and technicians moved between stations, their faces tense with concentration. Nathan adjusted his glasses, leaning closer to the screen as a new set of data scrolled across it. Another signal had been intercepted, this time much closer than before. It wasn't coming from deep space anymore, but from somewhere within the Sol system. Rachel Dawson, the base commander, stood nearby, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She was a woman in her late 40s with short blonde hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. "What do we know so far?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Nathan hesitated, tapping a few keys to pull up more information. "It's fragmented," he explained. "But there are patterns, repeating sequences that suggest some kind of language. We're trying to decode it now." Rachel nodded, though her expression remained serious. "And the origin? It's coming from the outer edge of the solar system," Nathan replied. "Somewhere near the Oort cloud." He paused, glancing at Rachel. "That's where the first signal came from too." Rachel frowned, her mind racing. The Oort cloud was a distant, icy region at the very edge of the solar system, a place rarely explored by humans. If something, or someone, was out there, it meant they were closer than anyone had anticipated. She turned to Emma Lewis, a linguistics expert who had joined the team to help analyze the signal. "Emma, any progress on the message?" Emma looked up from her workstation, her dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail. "Bits and pieces," she said cautiously. "There are fragments that look like words. Help, destroy, and something that might translate to coming. But it's not enough to form a full picture yet." Rachel exhaled sharply, rubbing her temples. "This isn't good," she muttered under her breath. Turning back to Nathan, she added, "We need to figure out what this means, and fast. If it's a warning, we don't have much time." Nathan nodded, already working on isolating clearer segments of the signal. As he did, an image began to emerge on one of the screens, a series of shapes that looked like massive structures. They were blurry and indistinct, but there was no mistaking their scale. Whatever they were enormous. "Rachel," Emma said suddenly, pointing at the screen. "Look at this." Rachel stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she studied the shapes. "Are those ships?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "It's possible," Nathan replied. "Or maybe weapons. We can't tell for sure yet." The implications weighed heavily on everyone in the room. If these structures belonged to whoever, or whatever, had sent the signal, then humanity was facing something far beyond its understanding. Rachel straightened, her jaw tightening with resolve. "We need to send a reconnaissance mission," she said firmly. "If we're going to figure out what's out there, we can't wait around for answers." Dangle Carter, a seasoned astronaut who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward. "I'll lead the mission," he volunteered. His voice was steady, his blue eyes unwavering. Dangle was known for his calm demeanor under pressure, and Rachel trusted him completely. "All right," Rachel said after a moment's hesitation. "But we move carefully. This isn't just about gathering information. It's about survival. If those structures pose a threat, we need to be ready." As the team began planning the mission, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The signal was growing stronger, pulsing with increasing intensity. Whatever was coming, it was getting closer, and humanity wasn't prepared. Outside the command center, the vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, silent and indifferent. For the first time in years, Nathan felt truly small. On the council station orbiting Proxima Centauri, Clara Hayes sat in front of a subspace communication console, her fingers hovering over the controls. The screen flickered as it displayed updates from Earth, data sent by Rachel Dawson and her team at Lunar Base Alpha. Clara read through the information carefully, her brow furrowing with concern. The signal had grown stronger, and fragments of imagery suggested something massive was lurking near the Oort cloud. She turned to Jacob Monroe, who stood nearby, arms crossed and face grim. "We need to share this with the others," Clara said, her voice steady, but tinged with urgency. "If Earth is facing a potential threat, the Council needs to know." Jacob nodded, though his expression betrayed his unease. "Agreed. But how do you think they'll react? After everything that's happened, trust is in short supply." Clara didn't respond immediately. She knew he was right. The departure of the human delegation had left a rift between species, and tensions were still high. Still, she couldn't ignore the gravity of the situation. Whatever was approaching wasn't just Earth's problem. It could affect everyone. The council reconvened later that day, the chamber filled with representatives from across the galaxy. As Clara stepped up to address them, she felt the weight of their stares. Some looked curious, others skeptical, and a few seemed outright hostile. Taking a deep breath, she began. Earth has detected a new signal, she explained, projecting the fragmented images onto a large screen behind her. It's coming from within our solar system, near the Oort cloud. These structures, they're enormous. We don't know what they are or why they're here, but they pose a potential threat. A murmur rippled through the room. Some ambassadors leaned forward, studying the images intently, while others exchanged wary glances. Then Kale, the reptilian delegate, spoke up. "Why should we care about your problems?" he asked sharply, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Your people left us when we needed unity. Why should we help now?" Clara clenched her fists under the table but kept her tone calm. "This isn't just Earth's problem," she replied. "If these structures mean danger, it won't stop at one planet. It could spread. We're all connected, whether we like it or not." Before Cal could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "She's right," said Zixer, the insectoid ambassador. Its glowing eyes scanned the room as it continued. "Ignoring this will only make us weaker. If there's even a chance of danger, we must act together." The room fell silent for a moment as the other ambassadors considered Zixer's words. Finally, a tall bird-like creature named Vela raised a wing-like appendage. "What does Earth plan to do?" it asked, its voice soft but clear. "They're sending a reconnaissance mission," Clara answered, "to investigate the signal and determine its origin. But they can't do it alone. They've asked for our support, for technology, resources, anything we can provide." Vela tilted its head thoughtfully. "And if the mission fails, what then?" Clara hesitated, glancing at Jacob before replying. "Then we'll face the consequences together," she said firmly. "But doing nothing isn't an option." The discussion continued, growing heated at times as factions debated whether to assist Earth or focus on their own defenses. Amidst the chaos, a reptilian delegate named Mecker revealed startling intel. "Signals like this have been recorded before," he rasped, his voice low and gravelly. "In other galaxies, civilizations vanish shortly after detecting them." A chill ran through the room. Clara felt her pulse quicken as murmurs of alarm spread among the ambassadors. "What happened to those civilizations?" someone asked. "No one knows," Mecker replied. "They simply disappeared. No traces, no survivors." The revelation cast a shadow over the meeting. Even those who had doubted Earth's concerns began to look uneasy. Clara seized the moment, addressing the group once more. "We don't know what's coming," she said, "but we do know one thing. We're stronger together. If we let fear divide us, we're already defeated." Her words resonated, though skepticism lingered in some eyes. As the meeting drew to a close, tentative agreements were made to send aid to Earth's mission. Yet Clara couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out, and that whatever was approaching might already be closer than anyone realized. Panic spread quickly as the days passed, both on Earth and aboard the Council station. The signal from the Oort cloud grew stronger, its pulsating rhythm now almost deafening in the sensors. On Lunar Base Alpha, Nathan Brooks worked tirelessly alongside Emma Lewis to decode the final pieces of the message. Their efforts revealed more fragmented images, massive, organic-looking shapes that seemed alive, shifting and twisting in ways that defied logic. The coordinates pointed directly to a cluster of objects drifting ominously in formation near the edge of the solar system. Rachel Dawson paced the command center, her mind racing with possibilities. "We're running out of time," she said, glancing at the clock on the wall. The reconnaissance mission led by Daniel Carter was set to launch within hours, but every second felt like an eternity. She turned to Nathan. Anything new? Nathan shook his head, adjusting his glasses. Not much. But there's something strange about the pulses. They're not random. They're synchronized, like they're trying to communicate. Emma chimed in, pointing at her screen. And look at this. She highlighted a section of the decoded text. It's repeating the same phrase over and over. Help us. Her voice trembled slightly as she added, what if it's not a threat? What if it's a cry for help? Rachel frowned, considering the possibility. If the signal was indeed a plea for assistance, humanity might be misinterpreting the situation entirely. But without more information, it was impossible to know for sure. Keep working on it, she instructed. We need answers before Daniel gets out there. Meanwhile, aboard the council station, Clara Hayes noticed subtle changes in the environment. The lights flickered occasionally, and small disruptions rippled through space-time around the station. At first, she dismissed them as technical glitches, but when the anomalies grew more frequent, alarm bells began ringing in her mind. She approached Jacob Monroe, who was reviewing updates from Earth. Something's wrong, she said urgently. The station's systems are acting up. Jacob looked up, his expression grim. You think it's connected to the signal? I don't know, Clara admitted, but I don't think it's a coincidence. That night, Jacob found himself staring out the observation window, his thoughts consumed by unease. The stars outside shimmered faintly, but something else caught his eye. A shadow moving against the backdrop of space. It was massive, impossibly large, and utterly silent. His heart pounded as he squinted, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Was it one of the structures from the images, or something else entirely? He rushed back to the main chamber, where Clara was speaking with Kale and Zixer. There's something out there, he blurted, interrupting their conversation. I saw it, a shadow, bigger than anything I've ever seen. Clara's eyes widened. Are you sure? Jacob nodded. It's close. Too close. The ambassadors exchanged uneasy glances. Even Kale, usually so skeptical, seemed shaken. If it's here already, he growled, then we're too late. Zixer clicked its mandibles nervously. We must warn Earth, it said. They need to know. Clara immediately contacted Rachel Dawson, relaying the sighting. Back at Lunar Base Alpha, Rachel listened intently, her face pale. Understood, she replied. We'll adjust the mission plan accordingly. She turned to Daniel Carter, who stood nearby. Be ready for anything, she told him. This isn't just exploration anymore, it's survival. As preparations continued, tension mounted. Both humans and aliens braced themselves for the unknown, their fear tempered only by the hope that understanding might still be possible. Whatever was coming, it was closer than anyone had imagined. And the choices they made next would shape the fate of countless worlds. The pulses from the alien signal grew louder and more intense, filling the air with a low, vibrating hum that seemed to seep into everything. On Earth, Rachel Dawson stood in the command center of Lunar Base Alpha, watching as technicians scrambled to stabilize their systems. The base's lights flickered erratically, and monitors displayed distorted images before snapping back into focus. What's happening? She demanded, her voice sharp but controlled. Nathan Brooks adjusted his glasses, typing furiously on his keyboard. It's affecting our equipment, he said, his tone urgent. The signal is interfering with power grids and sensors. It's warping reality around us. Emma Lewis looked up from her station, her face pale. If this keeps up, we won't be able to launch the mission at all. Rachel clenched her fists, frustration bubbling inside her. We don't have a choice, she said firmly. We have to go now. If we wait any longer, whatever's out there might reach us first. Meanwhile, aboard the Council station orbiting Proxima Centauri, Clara Hayes and Jacob Monroe experienced similar disruptions. The station's gravity fluctuated, causing objects to float briefly before crashing back down. Outside the observation windows, the stars appeared to shift unnaturally, as though space itself was bending. Clara gripped the edge of a console to steady herself, her knuckles white. "This isn't normal," she muttered under her breath. Jacob nodded grimly. "It's the signal. It's doing something to the fabric of space-time." Kale, the reptilian ambassador, hissed angrily. "Your kind brought this upon us," he accused, pointing a clawed finger at Jacob. "You left when we needed you most, and now look what has happened." Clara stepped forward, her voice rising above the chaos. "This isn't about blame," she snapped. "We're all in danger here. If we don't work together, none of us will survive." Her words silenced the room momentarily, but the tension remained thick. Zixer clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. "Perhaps she is right," it said cautiously. "But working together means taking risks. Are you willing to do that?" Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. A technician rushed into the chamber, panic evident in his glowing eyes. "Ambassadors," he cried. "The alien fleet. It's emitting low-frequency pulses. They're destabilizing our systems." Clara turned to Jacob, her heart racing. "We need to make contact," she said firmly. "Now." Jacob hesitated, then nodded. "I'll lead the team," he volunteered. He glanced at Kale and Zixer. "Will you join us?" Kale growled deep in his throat, but eventually gave a reluctant nod. Zixer tilted its head slightly before clicking its mandibles in agreement. "Very well," it said. "But if this ends badly, humanity will answer for it." With no time to waste, the group boarded a small shuttle and prepared to approach the nearest alien vessel. Back on Earth, Daniel Carter and his crew launched their reconnaissance mission, heading toward the Oort cloud. Both teams moved cautiously, unsure of what awaited them. As the shuttle drew closer to the massive structure looming ahead, Jacob couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and dread. The ship, or whatever it was, looked alive, its surface shifting and pulsating like an enormous organism. Lights flickered across its body, casting eerie shadows in the darkness of space. "This doesn't look like a weapon," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "No," Jacob agreed, his eyes fixed on the view outside. "But that doesn't mean it's friendly." Inside the council station, Nathan and Emma finally succeeded in decoding the final piece of the signal. The message was clear now. "Help us. Destroy the void." Emma stared at the screen, her hands trembling. "What does it mean?" she asked softly. Nathan shook his head, his expression grim. "I don't know, but I think we're about to find out." The shuttle docked with the alien vessel, and Jacob led the team through the airlock. The interior was vast and dimly lit, with walls that seemed to breathe in rhythm with the pulses. As they ventured deeper, they realized they weren't alone. Shadows moved in the distance, and faint whispers echoed through the corridors. Whatever they were facing, it was alive. And it had been waiting for them. The team stood frozen in the massive chamber, their eyes fixed on the towering figure before them. It shifted and swirled like smoke, yet it felt solid, alive. The whispers that had filled the corridors were gone now, replaced by a deep, resonant voice that seemed to echo inside their minds. "You came," it said again, its tone heavy with exhaustion. "You must help us." Jacob Monroe took a cautious step forward, his flashlight beam wavering slightly as he aimed it at the figure. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with unease. "We are what remains," the figure replied, its form flickering faintly. "Survivors of worlds consumed by the void. We sent the signal to warn you, to ask for your aid. The void is coming, and it will not stop until all life is erased." Clara Hayes felt her pulse quicken. Her mind raced to process the enormity of what she was hearing. "The void?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What is it? How do we stop it?" The figure paused, as if gathering strength to continue. "The void is hunger incarnate, a force without reason or mercy. It devours everything it touches. It cannot be destroyed, only contained. But containment requires sacrifice." Kale growled low in his throat, his claws flexing anxiously. "Sacrifice? What kind of sacrifice?" The figure turned its gaze toward the reptilian ambassador, its presence overwhelming. Energy, life, unity. You must combine your strengths, your technologies, your wills. Only together can you create a barrier strong enough to hold the void at bay. Zixer clicked its mandibles nervously, its glowing eyes darting between the figure and the others. "And if we fail?" it asked, its metallic voice sharp with fear. "If you fail," the figure said simply, "existence ends. There will be nothing left, not even memory." A suffocating silence fell over the group as the weight of the words sank in. Jacob glanced at Clara, then at Cal and Zixer. Each of them bore the same expression of shock and uncertainty. Finally, Clara stepped forward, her voice firm despite the fear gripping her chest. "If this is true, if the void is real, we'll do whatever it takes to stop it. But we'll need everyone's help, every species, every world." The figure studied her for a long moment, its swirling form steadying slightly. "Then go," it said. "Unite your people. Time is short." Before anyone could respond, the chamber began to dissolve around them. The walls melted into darkness, and the hum that had filled the air faded into silence. When the team blinked, they found themselves back aboard their shuttle, staring at each other in stunned disbelief. None of them spoke as they returned to the council station, their thoughts consumed by what they had witnessed. Back on Earth, Daniel Carter's reconnaissance mission reached the Oort cloud, where they encountered the same massive structures. Through their communications link, Rachel Dawson received confirmation. The alien fleet wasn't an enemy, it was a warning. Humanity now faced a choice: band together with the rest of the galaxy or face annihilation alone. At the council station, Jacob and Clara relayed the message to the assembled ambassadors. The room was tense, the air thick with fear and doubt. But slowly, reluctantly, the representatives began to nod. They understood the stakes. If they didn't act together, there would be no second chances. Rachel Dawson addressed her team at Lunar Base Alpha, her voice resolute. "This isn't just about Earth anymore," she said. "It's about survival, for everyone. We work together, or we don't survive at all." As plans unfolded across the galaxy, hope flickered faintly amidst the fear. Trust was fragile, but it was enough to take the first step. Whatever happened next would depend on whether unity could overcome division, and whether courage could conquer despair. The void was coming, and time was running out.